Train ain't coming back tonight, girl. You best find somewhere else to freeze. The station master spits at the trembling bride, clutching her wedding dress against the howling Christmas wind. The scattered passengers whisper cruel assumptions about the abandoned woman, certain she's destined to become another cautionary tale buried in tomorrow's snow. But when the weathered cowboy emerges from the storm on horseback, something shifts. His haunted eyes recognize her desperation because he's worn that same look of loss. His offer of shelter binds their fates together, neither knowing that his sprawling ranch teeters on the edge of a conspiracy designed to strip him of everything his family built. Hidden beneath her grateful acceptance lies a secret skill that could either save his legacy or destroy them both when powerful enemies discover what she's truly capable of. Will the cowboy's act of Christmas mercy become his salvation or his ruin? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. Philadelphia's winter had been harsh, but Colorado Territory's December bite cut deeper than Josephine Walker ever imagined. She clutched the telegram that had shattered her carefully planned future 3 days ago. Thomas Reed's words still burned in her memory. Plans changed. Find your own way home. The merchant she'd traveled west to marry had chosen the banker's daughter instead. Business connections trumped promises made to a freedman's daughter. No matter how educated or proper she carried herself. Josie smoothed her wedding dress, the ivory silk now wrinkled from sleeping in train station chairs. It was her finest garment and her only protection against the judgment that followed her everywhere. The remote Colorado station offered little comfort. Wind howled through gaps in the wooden walls, while snow began falling harder. Other passengers huddled near the potbelly stove, casting suspicious glances her way. The station master, a weathered man with tobacco-stained teeth, made his position clear. Trains delayed indefinite, storms getting worse. He avoided looking directly at her. Might be best if you found other arrangements. Josie's fingers tightened around her small suitcase. Her remaining money wouldn't cover lodging, even if any establishment would accept her. The other passengers whispered among themselves, their words carrying across the small space. Probably ran off from somewhere. These people don't understand their place. Storm will take care of the problem. She'd faced such cruelty before in Philadelphia, but never while stranded and vulnerable. Her father Samuel had taught her to hold her head high, to meet ignorance with dignity. Those lessons felt harder to remember now. Outside, hoofbeats cut through the wind's howl. A lone rider approached through the swirling snow, his broad shoulders hunched against the cold. The man dismounted and pushed through the station door, bringing a gust of frigid air that made everyone shiver. He was tall and weathered, with kind eyes that seemed older than his years. His gaze swept the room before settling on Josie. Something flickered across his features. Recognition, perhaps, though not of her specifically, more like seeing a familiar pain reflected back. Eli Bowman, he introduced himself to the station master. Heard the train's delayed. Storm's too fierce. Might be morning before the tracks clear. The station master's tone carried more respect than he'd shown anyone else. You heading back to your spread? Eli nodded, then looked at Josie again. She straightened under his scrutiny, prepared for another dismissive glance. Instead, he approached her directly. Ma'am, forgive my boldness, but you seem to be in difficult circumstances. Josie lifted her chin. I'm managing quite well, thank you. I'm sure you are. His voice held no mockery. But this storm's going to get worse, and the station master's right about the train. My ranch isn't far. You're welcome to shelter there until travel improves. The other passengers fell silent, their shock palpable. The station master's jaw dropped. Josie studied Eli's face, searching for hidden motives or cruel intentions. She found only genuine concern and something deeper, loneliness that matched her own. That's very kind, but I couldn't impose. It's Christmas Eve, ma'am. Seems like we could both use the company. The simple honesty in his words decided her. Josie gathered her belongings and followed Eli into the storm. His horse was sturdy and calm, accepting the additional passenger without complaint. Eli helped her onto the saddle behind him, his touch respectful and brief. The ride to Bowman Ranch took 30 minutes through increasingly heavy snow. Eli guided his horse with practiced ease while Josie marveled at the vast landscape. Even in the storm, she could sense the territory's raw beauty and endless possibility. The ranch house sat solid and welcoming against the hillside. Light glowed in the windows, promising warmth and safety. Eli helped her down and led her inside, where blessed heat greeted them. "Rosa," he called, "we have a guest." A middle-aged Mexican woman emerged from the kitchen, her weathered face kind but curious. She took in Josie's appearance without judgment, though her eyebrows rose at the wedding dress. "This is Miss Walker. She'll be staying until the storm passes." Rosa nodded and moved toward the kitchen. "I'll prepare the guest room and some hot food." A small boy peered around the corner, dark hair tousled and eyes wide with curiosity. Eli's expression softened. "Come meet our guest, Ben." The child approached shyly. Josie knelt to his level, offering a gentle smile. "Hello, Ben. I'm Josephine, but you can call me Miss Josie. Are you really wearing a wedding dress?" His innocence cut through the evening's tension. "I am, though I suppose it's just a fancy dress now." Eli cleared his throat. "Ben, why don't you help Rosa while I show Miss Josie to her room?" As they climbed the wooden stairs, Josie noticed the house's comfortable but slightly neglected state. Family photographs lined the hallway, including a beautiful woman who bore no resemblance to anyone she'd met. "My wife, Sarah," Eli said quietly, catching her glance. "She passed 2 years ago." "I'm sorry for your loss," he nodded, opening a door to a clean, simple bedroom. "Ben's my brother's boy. Lost his parents in a wagon accident last year. We're still figuring out how to be a family." The admission revealed more vulnerability than Josie expected. This man understood loss and displacement. Perhaps that's why he'd offered shelter to a stranger. "Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Your kindness means more than you know." "Just Eli. And kindness works both ways. Christmas shouldn't be spent alone." After he left, Josie sat on the bed and finally allowed herself to acknowledge the truth. She wasn't just stranded or abandoned. She was completely without prospects, carrying skills that seemed worthless in this harsh land. But something about Eli Bowman and his quiet household sparked hope she'd thought lost forever. 3 weeks had passed since Christmas Eve, and Josie had settled into an unexpected rhythm at Bowman Ranch. The storm had cleared within days, but no one mentioned her leaving. Eli seemed grateful for the help with Ben, and Rosa appreciated another pair of capable hands. The peaceful routine shattered when Sheriff Turner rode up with legal documents. His cold eyes lingered on Josie with obvious disapproval before focusing on Eli. "Got papers for you, Bowman. Seems there's questions about your land claims." Eli took the documents, his jaw tightening as he read. "Back taxes and abandonment? This ranch has been in my family for 20 years. Not according to these records. You got 60 days to prove continuous occupation or the territory seizes the property." Turner's smirk revealed his satisfaction. "Consolidated Mining Companies filed a claim. They say you abandoned the place after your wife died." Josie watched from the porch, noting how Turner's presentation felt rehearsed. Something about the legal language caught her attention, though she couldn't place what seemed wrong. After Turner left, Eli slumped against the fence post. The papers scattered in the wind, and Josie quickly gathered them. Her eyes moved over the legal text with practiced efficiency. "These documents contain procedural irregularities," she said without thinking. Eli looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Josie realized her mistake immediately. She'd spoken like the legal clerk she'd been, not the abandoned bride she was pretending to be. Heat rushed to her cheeks. "I just meant the language seems unusual." But Eli wasn't fooled. He studied her face with new intensity. "How do you know about legal procedures, Josie?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Rosa appeared in the doorway, Ben beside her, both sensing the tension. Josie looked at their expectant faces and made a decision that would change everything. "Because I spent 5 years working in my father's law office in Philadelphia." The admission fell like a stone into still water. Eli's eyebrows rose while Rosa crossed herself and muttered something in Spanish. "Your father was a lawyer?" "Samuel Walker." one of the first colored attorneys in Philadelphia. Pride crept into her voice despite her nervousness. I handled his correspondence, researched cases, filed documents. I know property law, contract disputes, territorial regulations. Eli stared at the papers in her hands with new understanding. You can actually read these legal documents. Better than read them. I can analyze them, find weaknesses, build a defense. Josie's confidence grew as she spoke. Your sheriff friend made several procedural errors. The filing dates don't match territorial requirements. The tax assessments reference property boundaries that don't exist in the original land grants. She moved to the kitchen table and spread the document systematically. Her trained eye caught details that would escape most people. Look here. The abandonment claim cites a 12-month period, but territorial law requires 18 months for agricultural properties. And this signature on the tax assessment doesn't match the county clerk's official seal. Eli watched her work with growing amazement. The woman who'd seemed so helpless at the train station was dissecting legal documents with surgical precision. How did you learn all this? Josie's hands stilled on the papers. The memories brought both pride and pain. Father couldn't afford proper legal assistance when he started his practice. Clients barely trusted a colored lawyer, let alone paid full fees. So he taught me everything: legal research, document preparation, case strategy. Her voice grew quiet. I helped him win a major property dispute against corrupt Philadelphia developers who were stealing land from Irish immigrants. Same tactics they're using here. The parallel struck them both simultaneously. Eli leaned forward, hope flickering in his eyes. You think you can fight this? I think we can fight this. Josie met his gaze steadily. But we need to understand what we're really facing. This isn't just about back taxes. Someone wants your land specifically. Rosa brought coffee while Josie organized the papers into categories. Her systematic approach revealed patterns that painted a disturbing picture. Consolidated Mining Company has filed similar claims on 4 other ranches in this county, all recently widowed or struggling families, all prime land near water sources. She looked up at Eli. They're targeting vulnerable properties. Ben climbed onto a chair beside her, fascinated by the neat stacks of papers. Can you really save our ranch, Miss Josie? I'm going to try my very best. Eli moved to stand behind her chair, reading over her shoulder. The closeness sent unexpected warmth through her, but she forced herself to focus. We need the original land patents, tax payment records, and any documentation proving continuous occupation. Bank records, purchase receipts, anything showing ongoing ranch operations. Most of that's scattered around the house. Sarah kept some records. My father kept others. Eli ran a hand through his hair. After Sarah died, I barely kept track of anything for months. That's exactly what they're counting on. Grief makes people vulnerable to legal manipulation. Josie's voice turned hard. But you maintained this ranch. You kept the cattle, paid Rosa, cared for Ben. We just need to prove it. As evening approached, they worked by lamplight. Josie's legal training guided their search through dusty boxes and forgotten files. Rosa contributed household records that documented continuous food purchases and supply deliveries. Even Ben helped, pointing out papers he'd seen his Uncle Eli writing on. For the first time since receiving the legal papers, Eli felt something other than despair. Watching Josie work, seeing her sharp mind attack the problem with methodical precision, he realized his Christmas Eve rescue had brought him exactly what he needed. The abandoned bride wasn't helpless at all. She was his secret weapon. Judge Harrison arrived from Denver with great fanfare, his expensive carriage and formal robes meant to impress the small community. Edith Cunningham greeted him personally, her finest dress and practiced smile suggesting their acquaintance ran deeper than civic duty. Josie watched the performance from the general store, noting how the judge's eyes lingered on Edith with familiar warmth. The territorial appointment was supposed to guarantee impartiality, but Harrison's body language told a different story. That woman's been spreading poison about you since Christmas, Rosa whispered beside her. Claims you're corrupting Eli and little Ben. The whispers had grown louder each week. Josie's presence at the ranch violated social expectations, and Edith Cunningham led the campaign to remind everyone of their disapproval. Church attendance became a weekly gauntlet of cold stares and pointed comments. But Josie had larger concerns than gossip. Her investigation into Consolidated Mining Company revealed a disturbing pattern across the territory. 7 ranches faced similar abandonment claims. All featured prime water access. All belonged to recently widowed or struggling families. "It's systematic," she explained to Eli as they pored over documents by lamplight. "They're not just after your ranch. They want to control the entire watershed." Eli studied the map she'd drawn, connecting affected properties with red lines. Smart strategy. Control the water, control everything downstream. And they're using corrupt legal processes to steal it. Josie's finger traced the connection points. Notice how all the abandonment claims cite the same 12-month period, even though territorial law requires 18 months for agricultural properties. Their defense was taking shape, but time pressure mounted daily. 28 days remained before the hearing, and Judge Harrison's bias became more obvious with each public appearance alongside Edith. The crisis deepened when Ben fell seriously ill. High fever and labored breathing suggested pneumonia, a killer on the frontier. The nearest doctor was 2 days away by horseback. And the child's condition worsened hourly. Josie took charge without hesitation. Her experience helping at Philadelphia's colored orphanage during the cholera outbreak guided her actions. Cool baths to break the fever, steam treatments to ease breathing, constant hydration when Ben could manage sips of water. "How do you know all this?" Eli asked during the second sleepless night. "Father volunteered our services during the epidemic. Said helping others was our Christian duty." Josie wrung out another cool cloth. "I learned that proper nursing often matters more than medical training." By the 3rd day, Ben's fever broke. His breathing eased, and color returned to his pale cheeks. The transformation was miraculous, and word spread quickly through the community. Suddenly, the same women who'd whispered cruel gossip began nodding respectfully when Josie passed. Pastor Mitchell publicly thanked her during Sunday service. Even some of the men admitted grudging appreciation for her skill. But success brought new dangers. Sheriff Turner began making daily visits, his presence increasingly threatening. He questioned Rosa about Josie's activities and searched openly for any excuse to cause trouble. "That woman's got too much influence on Bowman," he told anyone who'd listen, filling his head with legal nonsense when he should accept reality. The reality Turner promoted involved selling the ranch to Consolidated Mining for a fraction of its value. His financial interest in the outcome became obvious when Josie spotted him meeting privately with company representatives. With 2 weeks remaining, desperation drove deeper investigation. Josie convinced Eli to search every corner of the property for overlooked documents. The ranch house revealed nothing new, but the old storm cellar held promise. "Father stored important papers down here during Indian troubles," Eli explained, lifting the heavy wooden door. "Haven't been down since Sarah died." The cellar was larger than expected, with stone walls and wooden shelving. Most documents suffered from moisture damage, but Josie's trained eye spotted something unusual. One section of the back wall didn't match the rest. "Eli, bring the lamp closer." Her fingers found the hidden catch, and a section of stone swung inward. Behind the false wall lay a metal strongbox, untouched by moisture and perfectly preserved. Inside, they discovered treasures that changed everything. Sarah's personal diary documented every day of ranch operation during Eli's darkest period. Her careful handwriting proved he'd maintained the cattle, repaired fences, and fulfilled all legal requirements despite his grief. The abandonment claim was completely false. But Sarah's diary was only the beginning. Underneath lay documents that exposed the entire conspiracy. Forged tax assessments showed how Consolidated Mining had falsified public records. Letters revealed Judge Harrison accepting regular payments for favorable rulings. Most shocking of all, correspondence proved Edith Cunningham's secret partnership in the mining company. Josie's hands trembled as she read the evidence. The scope of corruption exceeded her worst suspicions. "She's been planning this for months," Josie whispered. "Every piece of gossip, Every social slight, it was all calculated to isolate you and make the land grab easier. Eli's face darkened as he absorbed the betrayal. Edith courted me for a year after Sarah died. I thought it was genuine affection. It was genuine greed. Look at these projected profit margins. Your ranch alone is worth $50,000 to mining operations. The evidence was overwhelming, but using it presented new challenges. Judge Harrison controlled the local court system. Sheriff Turner enforced his will through intimidation. The entire legal apparatus was compromised. We can't trust anyone in the local government, Josie concluded. This goes all the way to the territorial level. But federal jurisdiction offered hope. Mail fraud, conspiracy across territorial lines, and corruption of federal land grants fell under U.S. martial authority. Josie began drafting a comprehensive report documenting every aspect of the conspiracy. As she worked through the night, preparing evidence that could save the ranch and expose the criminals, Eli watched with growing admiration. The abandoned bride had become their salvation, her father's legal training their secret weapon against seemingly impossible odds. The hearing was 8 days away, and everything depended on the next week's preparations. The evidence changed everything, but using it required careful strategy. Josie spent the next morning crafting a detailed letter to U.S. Marshal Davis in Denver, documenting every aspect of the conspiracy with meticulous precision. Her legal training guided each paragraph, building an irrefutable case against the corrupt network. Federal mail fraud, conspiracy to defraud territorial land grants, bribery of appointed officials, she explained to Eli as she sealed the envelope. These charges fall under federal jurisdiction. Marshal Davis has authority over Judge Harrison. Eli arranged for Tom Fletcher, a trusted neighbor, to carry the message to Denver. The round trip would take 4 days, cutting dangerously close to the hearing date, but they had no choice. Be careful who you trust, Josie warned Fletcher. Sheriff Turner has eyes everywhere. While they waited for federal response, Josie focused on building community support. Her nursing of Ben had cracked the wall of prejudice, but more work remained. She approached Pastor Mitchell first. I know you've seen the changes in this community, she said after Sunday service. Good families facing impossible legal challenges. Mysterious tax claims against properties held for generations. Pastor Mitchell nodded gravely. The Hendersons lost their farm last month. Similar circumstances to yours. Because it's the same conspiracy targeting multiple families. Josie handed him copies of the evidence. We're not asking anyone to take sides. We're asking them to witness the truth. The pastor studied the documents with growing alarm. The forged signatures and impossible dates were obvious even to untrained eyes. This is criminal activity, which is why we need honest people willing to testify about what they've witnessed. Property assessments that don't match reality. Families pressured to sell at unfair prices. Officials making decisions that benefit outside interests. Word spread quietly through the community. Rosa's network of ranch wives proved invaluable, carrying messages and gathering testimonies. Women who'd lived here for decades compared notes about suspicious activities they'd dismissed individually, but recognized as patterns collectively. Martha Prescott, whose husband had faced similar tax challenges the previous year, brought her documentation to the ranch. Same irregularities you found, she confirmed. Different clerks supposedly filed our papers, but it's the same handwriting. James Cooper, who owned the largest spread downstream, arrived with water rights documentation. Been wondering why Consolidated Mining keeps asking about my creek access. Now it makes sense. Even Doc Thompson, finally returned from his extended absence, offered support. Treated 3 families who lost their properties to legal challenges this year. All showed signs of severe stress. All mentioned feeling targeted and helpless. The coalition grew daily, but so did the opposition's pressure. Sheriff Turner increased his patrols around Bowman Ranch. His presence clearly meant to intimidate. Edith Cunningham's social campaign intensified, spreading rumors about Josie corrupting the community's moral fabric. She's getting desperate, Rosa observed after overhearing particularly vicious gossip at the Mercantile. Means your evidence is working. Judge Harrison's bias became more obvious as the hearing approached. His public statements about outside agitators disrupting established order left no doubt about his predetermined conclusions. The fix was clearly in. 3 days before the scheduled hearing, Tom Fletcher returned from Denver with urgent news. He found Josie and Eli working in the ranch office, surrounded by organized stacks of evidence. "Marshal Davis is coming," Fletcher announced breathlessly. "Says he's been investigating territorial corruption for months. Your evidence connects several cases across multiple counties." Relief flooded through Josie, but Fletcher's expression remained grim. "There's more." Davis warned that Harrison and Turner know federal authorities are involved. They're moving up the hearing to tomorrow. The news hit like a physical blow. Tomorrow left no time for final preparations or witness coordination. Josie's carefully planned strategy crumbled in an instant. Can they legally change the date with 1 day's notice? In territorial court, the judge has broad discretionary powers. Josie's legal training provided unwelcome clarity, especially if he claims scheduling conflicts or administrative necessity. Eli's jaw tightened with barely controlled anger. So, they can rig the timing to prevent federal intervention. Not if we're ready for them. Josie's voice gained strength as her mind raced through possibilities. "Marshal Davis expects the original date. We need to get word to him about the change." "I'll ride back tonight," Fletcher volunteered. "Too risky. Turner's watching all the roads now." Rosa appeared in the doorway with coffee and practical wisdom. "But my cousin Maria works at the Denver Telegraph office. I can get a message through." As evening fell, they finalized their desperate strategy. The hearing would proceed without federal backup, but Josie would use the platform to expose the conspiracy publicly. The community witnesses would attend despite the short notice, creating a record that federal authorities could use later. "It's not ideal, but it's our only option," Josie concluded. Ben appeared at her elbow, having listened to the adult conversation with serious attention. "Are we going to lose the ranch, Miss Josie?" She knelt to his level, meeting his worried gaze with steady confidence. "Not if I can help it. Sometimes you have to fight even when the odds look bad." "Like when I was sick and you didn't give up?" "Exactly like that." As they prepared for bed, knowing tomorrow would determine everything, Eli found Josie on the front porch, staring at the star-filled sky. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything you've done. Win or lose tomorrow, you gave us a real chance." Josie turned to meet his eyes, seeing gratitude and something deeper reflected there. "This isn't just about your ranch anymore. It's about justice, about proving that ordinary people can stand up to corruption and win." The hearing was less than 12 hours away, and their entire future hung in the balance. New Year's Day dawned clear and cold. The courthouse filled beyond capacity, as word of the hearing spread through the community overnight. Rosa's network had worked miracles, gathering dozens of witnesses despite the sudden schedule change. Judge Harrison presided from the bench with obvious confidence. His expensive robes and formal bearing impressed visitors unfamiliar with territorial corruption. Sheriff Turner controlled courthouse security, positioning himself strategically to intimidate potential supporters. Edith Cunningham sat in the front row, dressed in her finest black silk. Her satisfied smile suggested she expected to acquire Bowman Ranch within the hour. Representatives from Consolidated Mining flanked her, legal documents ready for immediate property transfer. Eli wore his best suit, standing straight despite the overwhelming odds. Josie sat beside him in her wedding dress, the ivory silk now serving as armor rather than symbol of abandonment. She'd chosen the garment deliberately, transforming her moment of greatest vulnerability into a declaration of strength. "This hearing will address abandonment claims against the Bowman Ranch property," Judge Harrison announced. "Given the clear evidence of neglect and unpaid obligations, we expect swift resolution." The predetermined outcome couldn't have been more obvious. Harrison's tone suggested mere formality rather than genuine legal proceeding. Consolidated Mining's attorney presented first, reading prepared statements about property abandonment and tax delinquency. His arguments relied entirely on the forged documents Josie had already identified as fraudulent, but without federal oversight, the fraud would stand unchallenged. The evidence clearly demonstrates 18 months of abandonment, the attorney concluded. Territorial law requires forfeiture under these circumstances. Judge Harrison nodded approvingly, preparing to render his corrupt verdict. Mr. Bowman, do you have any response to these allegations? Eli stood slowly, his prepared statement trembling slightly in his hands. He began recounting his continuous ranch operation, supported by witness testimony and documentation. His voice gained strength as neighbors nodded confirmation of his claims, but Harrison interrupted dismissively. Mr. Bowman, personal testimony cannot override official records. The documentation clearly shows abandonment. Your Honor, if I may address the court. Josie rose gracefully, her legal training evident in her posture and tone. The courtroom fell silent, surprised by her intervention. Harrison's eyebrows rose with obvious irritation. Ma'am, this is a legal proceeding. Spectators cannot participate. I'm not a spectator, Your Honor. I'm Mr. Bowman's legal representative. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Edith's confident smile faltered. Sheriff Turner stepped forward threateningly, but Josie continued without flinching. I am Josephine Walker, trained legal clerk with 5 years' experience in Philadelphia property law. I request permission to present evidence on Mr. Bowman's behalf. Harrison's face flushed with anger. This is highly irregular. Women cannot practice law in this territory. I'm not practicing law. I'm presenting documented evidence as Mr. Bowman's chosen representative, which territorial statute allows. The legal technicality caught Harrison off guard. Josie had researched every possible loophole, preparing for exactly this moment. Her confident demeanor commanded respect even from hostile observers. Furthermore, Your Honor, I must address serious irregularities in the prosecution's evidence. She approached the bench with copies of the forged documents, her systematic analysis prepared to expose every fraudulent detail. But as she opened her mouth to continue, the courthouse doors burst open. U.S. Marshal Davis strode in with 3 federal agents, their badges gleaming in the winter sunlight. The timing was perfect, Rosa's telegram having reached them just hours earlier. This federal investigation takes precedence over territorial proceedings, Davis announced. Judge Harrison, Sheriff Turner, you're both under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and corruption of federal land grants. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Edith Cunningham tried to flee, but found her path blocked by federal agents. Sheriff Turner reached for his weapon, then thought better of it when faced with superior firepower. This is outrageous, Harrison sputtered. I'm a duly appointed territorial judge. You're a criminal who accepted bribes to steal federal land grants, Davis replied. We have documented evidence of your conspiracy with Consolidated Mining Company. Josie stepped forward, offering the marshal her meticulously organized evidence file. Marshal Davis, this documentation proves systematic fraud affecting 7 properties across the territory. Davis scanned the papers with professional appreciation. Miss Walker, I presume. Your telegrams provided exactly what we needed to coordinate this operation. As federal agents arrested the conspirators, the community witnesses looked on in amazement. Justice was actually being served, corruption exposed, and innocent families protected. Mrs. Cunningham, Davis addressed the pale woman trying to blend into the crowd. You're also under arrest as a co-conspirator and secret partner in this criminal enterprise. Edith's mask of respectability crumbled completely. You don't understand. That land was supposed to be mine. Eli should have married me after Sarah died. Her confession revealed the personal hatred driving the conspiracy. Rejection had motivated revenge, greed had enabled corruption, and federal law enforcement had ended both. Mr. Bowman, Marshal Davis announced officially, all charges against your property are dismissed. The federal government recognizes your clear and legal title to Bowman Ranch. The courtroom erupted in cheers from community members who'd lived in fear of similar targeting. Justice wasn't just individual victory, but community protection against systematic corruption. As the criminals were led away in chains, Pastor Mitchell approached Josie with obvious admiration. Miss Walker, what you've accomplished here today will be remembered for generations. But Josie's attention focused on Ben, who'd broken free from Rosa's protective grasp. to run toward them. His uncle's ranch was safe, their family was secure, and the woman who'd saved them both was staying forever. The hearing that should have destroyed them had instead exposed their enemies and secured their future. The weeks following the courthouse triumph transformed everything. Marshal Davis's investigation uncovered corruption spanning 3 territories, with Bowman Ranch serving as the key evidence that brought down an entire criminal network. Families across Colorado Territory received their stolen properties back, and federal reforms protected future homesteaders from similar schemes. Josie's role in exposing the conspiracy earned recognition far beyond the local community. The territorial governor personally thanked her for her service to justice. Newspapers in Denver and even back in Philadelphia carried stories about the brilliant legal clerk who'd saved an entire region from systematic theft. But the most meaningful changes happened closer to home. "Miss Josie, can you help me with this reading?" Ben called from the kitchen table where he practiced his letters each morning. His health had returned completely, and his mind absorbed knowledge with impressive speed. "Of course." Josie sat beside him, noting his careful formation of each word. "You're making excellent progress. Rosa says I'm smart like you. Says maybe I could be a lawyer someday." The possibility filled Josie with quiet pride. Education opened doors that circumstance might otherwise keep locked. Ben's future stretched ahead, filled with opportunities his parents never could have imagined. Rosa bustled around the kitchen, preparing for the steady stream of visitors who'd begun seeking Josie's legal advice. Word had spread about her expertise, and families throughout the territory brought property disputes, contract questions, and inheritance problems to Bowman Ranch. "Mrs. Henderson arrives this morning about her deceased husband's will," Rosa announced. "Then the Morrison family needs help with their water rights dispute." The work filled a genuine need in the community. Most residents couldn't afford trips to Denver for legal consultation, and local officials had proven untrustworthy. Josie's combination of training and integrity made her indispensable. Eli appeared in the doorway, his face bright with the contentment that had replaced months of worry. The ranch was thriving under his renewed attention, cattle healthy and property improvements proceeding steadily. "Governor's letter arrived," he announced, waving an official envelope. "They're offering you the position of territorial legal advocate, first woman to hold such an appointment." Josie read the formal offer with growing excitement. The role would legitimize her work while expanding her ability to help families across Colorado Territory. The salary would provide financial independence she'd never imagined possible. "It means traveling to remote communities, setting up legal clinics, training local officials in proper procedures," she explained to Ben, who listened with rapt attention. "Would you still live here?" "The ranch would be my home base. I'd travel for work, but always return to family." The word family carried new weight in their household. Ben had begun calling her Ma the week after the hearing, the title emerging naturally during a bedtime story. Rosa had become everyone's beloved grandmother figure. Eli provided steadiness and strength that anchored their unconventional unit. But the most significant change was growing between Josie and Eli themselves. Their partnership during the legal crisis had revealed deep compatibility beyond shared circumstances. Eli respected her intelligence and independence. Josie admired his integrity and gentle strength. The attraction that had sparked during desperate circumstances had developed into genuine love, built on mutual respect and shared values. "There's something else in today's mail," Eli said quietly, producing a small velvet box. Ben gasped with excitement while Rosa wiped tears from her eyes. Everyone had been expecting this moment, but the reality still carried overwhelming emotion. "Josephine Walker," Eli began, dropping to one knee beside her chair. "You came into our lives when we needed you most, but you stayed because we love each other. Will you marry me?" The proposal came not from desperation or convenience, but from joy and hope for their shared future. Josie's eyes filled with tears as she nodded her acceptance. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The ring was simple but beautiful, a gold band with a small diamond that caught the morning light. As Eli slipped it onto her finger, Ben cheered and Rosa began planning the celebration that would follow. Spring brought their wedding day, a community celebration that contrasted dramatically with that lonely Christmas night at the train station. The entire territory seemed to attend. Families whose properties Josie had helped save joining neighbors who'd witnessed her courage and character. Pastor Mitchell performed the ceremony in the ranch's front yard, with wildflowers blooming across the meadows and snow-capped mountains providing a majestic backdrop. Josie wore a new dress, white silk that Rosa had sewn with loving care, but she also carried the ivory wedding dress from that first night as her something old. "You transform everything you touch," Eli told her during their first dance as husband and wife. "Our ranch, our family, this entire community." "We transformed each other," Josie corrected. "Christmas night brought us together, but love made us family." Ben stood between them during the photographs, his smile bright with security and happiness. Rosa directed the celebration with grandmotherly pride, ensuring every guest felt welcomed and fed. As evening approached and neighbors began heading home, the new family gathered on their porch to watch the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Ben leaned against Josie's shoulder while Eli's arm circled her waist. "Are you happy, Ma?" Ben asked sleepily. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." The abandoned bride had found far more than shelter that Christmas night. She'd discovered purpose, family, and love that would last a lifetime. The train station's cold platform seemed like another world entirely, replaced by the warmth of home and the promise of tomorrow's possibilities. Their story had transformed from desperate rescue to triumphant partnership, proving that sometimes life's most difficult moments lead to its greatest blessings.